Revolutionary talk for revolutionary times. Promoting peace, liberty, and prosperity around the clock. LibertyTalk.fm.
Welcome to Living the Solution with Dr. Elena George. Today I have a guest who's appeared on the show before, someone who I highly respect, and someone who's like me in the trenches, and who's written a wonderful book called Infected: Secrets from the Medical Underground, How to Prevent and Treat Any Infection. And I think in this day and age, we need to be our own physicians, because the healthcare system has changed from the time I trained to the time I graduated, opened my practice. This is a completely different ballgame. And those of us who practice medicine using the Hippocratic Oath are standing strong. And I think patients need to join us. But you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I wanted Dr. Guardia to come back on the show, because this is a friend of the show and a friend to medicine and humanity. And I just want to welcome you back, Dr. Guardia. I know you're very busy, and the time that you're taking today means a lot to me. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. George. I really appreciate it.
You know, I just got your book, and it really made me, I was happy. It's made me smile, because it's about giving patients empowerment. I think there's a lot of things happening to people where people just make pronouncements on high and everybody's just supposed to go along with the program without questioning it. And we're adults here. We need to question everything, in my opinion. If you don't, then you're about to get waylaid by whatever comes down the pipe. And I'm just curious, what made you write this book? Because it's very timely, but it speaks volumes. It's well written and it's easy to read.
Well, yeah, I was personally quite frustrated with COVID, like everyone was. But more so, I couldn't have been more disappointed by our colleagues overall. Not everyone, but the vast majority of them seemed to just march along in lockstep, weren't questioning anything, and it was against things we were taught. I'm old enough, and I believe you are as well, although you look much better than me, that, in the day when we were training, we would have active debates about things. And, really, really strong debates about, arguing for or against something. And you would learn a lot from the opposition and they from you. Mm-hmm. And at the end, you would come to a consensus, or one of you would convince the other one that they were correct. And that was okay. We weren't vilified for it. You weren't ostracized. You weren't punished for it. That was what science is all about, and always has been about finding truth. And that's why I wrote the book, because I felt that in the mainstream media, they were just going along like lemmings. They weren't looking for the truth. They weren't looking for things some of the things that they were pronouncing, and even Dr. Fauci and the powers that be are pronouncing, were totally counterintuitive. They were against, for example, saying that the virus is going to become, each wave of the virus is going to become more potent than the last and more deadly, and we have to overcome this. That's never happened in history with viruses. They always mutate to less deadly but more contagious. It's the trade-off. Mm-hmm. Because the virus wants market share. The virus doesn't want to kill you. SARS-1, for example, and MERS, Middle East respiratory syncytial virus, it was so lethal, they had approximately a 30 to 35% lethality. They never spread, because the people became so sick and they were down right away. They didn't have a chance to go out among other people and spread it. And so that virus reached a dead end. But for the first wave of COVID was certainly a lot more lethal than any of the subsequent waves, but wasn't as lethal as they told us it was. And I argued from the beginning that, each wave will be less lethal but more contagious. And so we'll be able to deal with it. And that's exactly what's happened. There's not been one wave all the way up to the present, BA5, I think is the most recent one, that is, once again, they keep saying, this one might be the one that's more lethal. No, they're not. And right now, among my patients, I've seen that it's pretty much like a bad cold or even a mild cold. And very few people are dying from it currently who aren't already totally immunocompromised from something else. And it's doing exactly what viruses do. And that was why I wrote it. I was frustrated, and I was frustrated by the lack of information, and I wanted to empower patients. Easy to boost your immune system and prevent these things. I argued all along, with any illness, it's always a consequence of overcoming the patient's immune system, no matter who they are, no matter what the illness is.
Mm-hmm.
If your body is able to deal with it, you're not going to catch it. That's why it's not 100% of people get the flu or get COVID or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on their immunity.
Well, I want to really delve into what you said, because there's a bit of conflation going on, and I want you to repeat it because people, I don't think, really understand the nuance of this. Contagious and infectious and deadly, they seem to conflate all of those words as if they all mean the same thing. And
right.
You just said something, I just want to reiterate it because people need to get this into their mind. Infectious and contagious doesn't mean you're going to die. It just means that your immune system will see it. And if it's intact, it'll mount a response to it. And then you become more resilient and your body can fight it off. Is that a way that people can look at it?
Yes, exactly. Like I said, not everyone gets every disease. However, every day, all of us are exposed to hundreds, if not thousands, of pathogens, viral, fungal, bacterial,
mm-hmm.
and we don't catch them. We don't catch them because our immune systems do what they're supposed to do. It deals with them. And it develops immunological memory to past infections. And that's why each time, for example, primary care doctors like myself, overall, even though I'm exposed to everything that goes around, I haven't been sick in years. Because several reasons. One, I have good immunity from past exposure. Number two, I actively boost my immune system to augment my defenses to fight it off. And so for those reasons, and my body is relatively strong. I don't have many comorbidities, fortunately. So for those reasons, I don't catch anything that comes around. And it's been that way for years. And so, but anyone can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Barring, like I said, some severely immunocompromised state where their immune system is just ravaged enough that it can't mount a defense.
I think it's interesting about the immune system is that it is so flexible. I mean, just talk about the strategy for a second of a vaccine that basically looks at one thing and mounts a response to a piece of something, right? Like the spike protein, for example, versus the immune system, which will see different parts of a virus or an antigen and mount multiple responses. I mean, what's more powerful, just looking for one thing or being able to see the bigger picture and being able to mount a more diverse and comprehensive response?
Exactly. That's why vaccination isn't as effective as having the illness and recovering from it. Then typically, just like you said, not typically, but always, the vaccine is only giving a piece of the spike protein, which is, for people who don't know, most people know what the coronavirus looks like. It looks like a ball with little protrusions, little spikes on the outside. Corona means crown. It looks like an old crown of a king or an emperor. And that's how it got its name. But those spikes are what attaches to the cell and allows entry into the cell for the virus. And viruses have to replicate inside the cell. They can't replicate outside of it. They don't have that capacity. And so eventually it explodes the cell when it replicates so much, and then spews virus internally in the body to infect other cells. Now, the people only had the vaccine, they only have antibodies to the outside of the virus, the spike protein. Those who've had the illness have antibodies to 4 or 5 different parts of the vaccine of the virus, and so for that reason, they have greater immunity, and that's proven to be the case, despite what we're told. And so, in addition to which, people who are vaccinated very likely are the cause of variants coming about, because in someone who's not vaccinated, their body doesn't have to evade the virus inside. If they catch a virus, they just deal with it. The body builds antibodies to it. However, if you have the vaccine, you're constantly producing spike protein, and your body produces antibodies to that alone, and it doesn't protect you against other parts of it. And so for that reason, the acquired immunity is better than vaccinated immunity.
Well, I know we're going to take a break in a minute, and I want to just close this particular part of the conversation, because when we come back, we're going to be talking about the different systems and give people a little anatomy, a lesson of how you can protect yourself and what it really means. But is there a difference? And this is interesting about this particular vaccine. It wasn't a neutralizing vaccine, right? It didn't kill the virus. It just kind of, I don't know, suppressed it or played with it. So there was a chance for the virus to get smart, right? And learn alternate means around it. And was that a different strategy from like any other vaccine that we've taken, like as kids, chickenpox or whatever people are taking in the past?
Yes. And this one's a messenger RNA vaccine, which we haven't had before. So it was different. And the other part of it is it actually goes into the DNA and changes that permanently. And so they wind up encoding part of it, incorporated into our DNA, and then moving forward. So those people who are vaccinated have an actual change in their genetics moving forward, as opposed to those who are not vaccinated. And you don't get that problem with just the disease itself. Mm. You get that only from the vaccination, which is problematic moving forward because no one's sure of the long-term consequences. And then when you have the vaccine companies locking up their safety data for 55 years, it makes you scratch your head and go, why would they do that? Why not just release it and tell us what's going on? So there's a lot of nefarious things going on. It just makes one wonder what's going on here.
I think, if you have a critical thinking bone in your body, it must be tingling right now. On that note, let's take our first break. You're living in the solution. Welcome back to Living the Solution. We're speaking with Dr. Ralph LaGuardia. He spent over 3 decades researching alternative ways for treating and preventing disease of all types. He's been in private practice in Connecticut for more than 30 years, and during that time, he's learned what alternative and natural methods work and which ones are snake oil. He's read hundreds of books and research articles on alternate ways of treating different diseases, and he has a huge personal library of many of these out-of-print books. He's well known in the medical underground of pioneering integrative medical practitioners, and integrative medicine is a highly effective combination of traditional and alternative medicine. He's the author of the book we're speaking about, as well as the Doomsday Book of Medicine. And one of the things that really strikes me is that you're forward thinking. This is not about letting things happen to you. It's about taking control. And you can't take control if you don't understand. And I think part of our conversation initially was to try to get people into the virology, a little bit of a medical side of this. But let's go into more detail if we can about the body and the different systems. I mean, the body's amazing, isn't it? The skin is a barrier. The lungs are able to fight things. I'm an ENT, and the nose and throat are able to thwart things from coming into the body before they're able to absorb. So we have a lot of weapons, don't we, to help, fix ourselves.
Oh, yeah, it's an amazing, amazing machine. It never, ever stops fascinating me. And you sound the same way. The more I learn about it, the more I think, God, this is beautiful. Just a perfect balance. Mm-hmm. It's made for us. It's made to protect us always from birth to death and keep us vigorously healthy if we don't poison it with exogenous toxins. And if we give it the proper nutrition and the proper sleep and rest and hydration and all the things you need. What I try to do in all my books, and in this one in particular, is I go system by system. I start from the head all the way down to the toes, do every organ, ears, nose, and throat, lungs, skin, GI, all of the urinary tract, vaginal, infections, venereal diseases. And I teach patients the anatomy. I want them to understand. I don't want to preach to them. I want to draw them in and tell them what this is about and why we do what we do for each section of the body. Your particular expertise, ENT, is probably the most critical port of entry for the body. because all day long we're breathing in things into our nose, into our respiratory systems, and that is the very likely entry for most diseases that we contact. And so that was a really critical one. And it's even now with things like monkeypox and smallpox. Monkeypox is more across the skin, but smallpox, as you know, is respiratory, goes in through the nasal passages and incubates there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought what I try to do, for example, in smallpox, is to teach patients how to eradicate the infection before it gets hold. It doesn't just go into you and immediately you're infected. It has to go into your mucosa, the lining of your nose, and into your throat, and eventually into your lungs. And as I mentioned, it has various barriers to pass. As soon as you enter the mouth, the mucosa, the lining of your mouth, has antibodies on it, and it has to overcome that right on the surface. And it has good flora, good bacteria, good viruses that are endogenous, they're part of our bodies, they're part of our immune system. A lot of our DNA is viral from over the decades, eons of developing. We've wound up incorporating things into us that worked for us. We acquired mitochondria in different ways, and that was through maternal lines. There's all these different fascinating ways that we've evolved, but you have to overcome the mucosal barrier first, and then work your way into the cells of the nose and the throat and replicate there, so you have time. So as I was reading about smallpox and monkeypox the last few months, I've been actually writing an addendum onto the book for a second edition. And I realized that the Achilles heel for smallpox was that very thing, the oral pharynx, because it has to replicate there. There has been transmission across the skin, has never been proven. They say there's been exposure across the skin, but most likely that's hand up to the nose and mouth and transferring it that way. Mm-hmm. And so you have an opportunity, because the incubation period is how long it takes for that virus or bacteria to develop and before it explodes into an infection. So that's the Achilles heel for smallpox. You can sterilize your nasal passages and your mouth and your throat a couple times a day, either using hydrogen peroxide diluted or a diluted mix of betadine, which is very effective in killing everything. As you know, we still use betadine in the hospital to clean everything. It works because it kills everything on contact. Mm-hmm. And it's full of iodine. It's actually good for you, but in limited quantities. But there's ways to eradicate that. I teach you in the book on how to do that. It's okay. You want to keep yourself healthy. I teach you how to do what's called nebulizer treatments with diluted hydrogen peroxide. Sometimes I add a drop of betadine to that just to potentiate it. But that works very well for treating upper respiratory tract stuff, even after you get it, but especially in the beginning, and it works much better for prevention than for anything else.
Is there value to things like saline as well, like using the saline sprays a few times a day to blow it out so it's not just sitting on the lining of the nose?
Yeah, there's mechanical advantages to that, but nothing like using the same thing. Well, what I do is I mix saline with hydrogen peroxide, mm-hmm. and then dilute it down. And the reason is it's isotonic then for your nose and your respiratory tract. It's meaning it's a pH that it can take, and it's what the body's used to. But yeah, I dilute it with saline. Sometimes I use a little budesonide with it as well, and that works really good for COVID and for respiratory tract infections of all types. But you're right. You can get some mechanical flushing. That always helps. But you can really potentiate it by using this other stuff. And these things are readily available to the public. Even nebulizers, you can buy them on Amazon. They're very cheap, mm-hmm. and they're very effective. So that's why I want to empower people. I don't want them to live in fear of things. I still see patients walking around. You see them in their cars driving around with masks on by themselves. I mean, come on. What are you protecting yourself against? People are afraid. And they shouldn't be afraid. Unless, like I said, unless you're immunocompromised or something, there's ways to dealing with things, and there's ways to boost your immune system, and there's ways to mechanically kill things, either flush them out or kill them on contact, that will prevent people.
We'll talk about the mask. A couple minutes before we go into our next break. But the mask versus what you just talked about, which is creating an active barrier, right? The mask isn't
Right.
active, it's passive, and it's filthy. I mean, you're exhaling all sorts of bacteria into it. You touch it. I mean, people drop it on the ground, put it back on. Is this thing really, I mean, I know what my answer is, but I just want another opinion on, is it worth it? Does it stop anything? I mean, we use it in the operating room, but it's to keep things.
I've been anti-mask.
Yeah, well, yeah. I know it doesn't do anything in the operating room, really. It's about also having a visual, right? If you always feel sick or your mind is always going to, there's a problem as opposed to a solution. It's an energy thing. If what you just described should empower people to start going to their pharmacies, getting these really cheap home-based products and this fix it, that will give you a lot of empowerment, and you won't be living in fear, because fear to me is the way that you get sick in the first place. Your immune system, your mindset, it's a setup for you to get sick, isn't it?
Right. Fear suppresses your immune system. It's not good for you. Well, depression suppresses your immune system. There's all these things. The mind is very strong. You could use, I always love the example that you could hypnotize someone and touch them with an eraser and tell them it's a match, and they'll develop a blister as if they were burnt. So right there, I mean, what is mind over matter is very strong. But as you said, from the beginning, I mean, even Fauci in the beginning said masks won't work, and then he flipped on it. But it's, you can blow smoke through them. I mean, so, if vaping passes through it and stuff, well, a virus is, 100 times smaller. Plus, the pores in the mask aren't large enough to stop a virus. It's like trying to stop a mosquito with a chain link fence. It's just not going to work. In addition to which, as you alluded to, you're circulating about bacteria and viruses just colonizing the inside of that mask. You're breathing them all day. It's dropping your oxygen levels. Not to mention, for children, the horrible lack of social cues from seeing teachers smile or their friends smile. And that's, all things you learn and you acquire and it becomes part of your personality. These poor kids have been, tortured with this stuff and denied an education. And the ironic part is COVID is clearly age-related. The older you are, the worse it is for you. And children, young people and children hardly ever get it. And if they get it, it's very mild unless they have cystic fibrosis or end-stage asthma or something severe. I'm not talking about kids who use a puffer to go, inhaler to go to a soccer game. I'm talking about kids who are in the hospital every month. Yes, they die of COVID and kids with cystic fibrosis, but they die of a lot of things. And it's not, their life expectancy is very short for those very reasons. But your average child, having them fearful of COVID and having them masked and vaccinated, in my opinion, is, with the death rate being so low, but you're still taking a chance of vaccinating them with a vaccine that's never had human studies on it. I just don't think it's right at all. I'm totally against vaccinating children.
Well, on that note, let's take our second break and come back. You're living in the solution. Welcome back to Living Solution. We're speaking with Dr. Ralph LaGuardia, and you can buy his book on Amazon. And do you also sell it on your own website, Dr. LaGuardia?
Yes. Yeah, we have it on Amazon. We have it on our own website. It's easier to buy on Amazon. but they run specials on it a lot too. But it's easy to find. All three of my books are on there: The Bible of Alternative Medicine, The Doomsday Book of Medicine, and Infected Secrets from Medical Underground.
Let's go back for a second to what we were speaking about prior to the break. Do you think that we could have used a different strategy? There are a lot of ways to handle this. It seems to me that we took the approach that would be the longest, the least effective, and would cause the most upheaval. Would it have been reasonable, since it didn't, like you said before the break, affect younger people, healthy people? Let them go about their business, see it, from an immune standpoint, mount an immunity to it, protect the people who are fragile. Maybe they needed to stay in a little bit more enclosed and removed environment, like people in nursing homes and that sort of thing. And we would have been done with this, wouldn't we?
Right. I mean, from a public health point of view, it was an insane strategy. I would have only isolated those at high risk, the elderly who were immune compromised, the very sick, any age group who were immune compromised, and let the rest of us go about our business if we get it. It proved not to be the end of the world for most people. And in addition to which, I would have promoted a public health strategy that boosted immunity. Theirs is all offense. Give them vaccines, give this, give that. Treat it with this, treat it with that. Why not boost your immune system? It's safe, it's effective, and it has beneficial side effects. The things I in my book, I talk about the gang of 7. It's 7 nutrients that I use for all diseases. And these all of them are beneficial. All of them have nothing but beneficial side effects. They all boost your immune system. They're all readily available, and they're all very cheap. And things like iodine, selenium, zinc, those 3 minerals do a lot. When they first had the studies on hydroxychloroquine, when they were doing that, hydroxychloroquine is a flavonoid. Well, I use quercetin, which is a plant flavonoid, but it's an ionophore. It opens an ions channel into the cell. When they first used hydroxychloroquine, it didn't work because they didn't give it along with zinc. They gave it by itself. Zinc works is why hydroxychloroquine works. It opens a channel into the cell. The zinc has a positive charge. The outside of the cell has a positive charge. It repels zinc. So it's like a cloaking device that allows it to enter through the cell wall into the cell. And as you know, zinc works against all viruses. It doesn't kill the virus. It prevents replication. So the virus, if it can't reproduce, it's fine. It doesn't do anything to you. And so I use quercetin, which is a plant-based substance that does the exact same thing. It's an ionophore. It opens that channel into the cell. And so I tell patients, as part of my immune boosting protocol, is to give zinc, iodine, selenium, and quercetin, because the zinc and the quercetin work together. And then I give vitamins A, D, and C. And all of those boost the immune system in various parts of the body. Vitamin A works with the mucosa very well, and then the lung very well. Vitamin C works everywhere. Vitamin D is interesting because all the studies they've done on vitamin D, first of all, it's amazing because they ignored the obvious. Everyone agrees, the lower your vitamin D level, the higher your mortality with COVID and with a lot of respiratory things. Flu, for example, I haven't had a flu shot in 30 years. I take vitamin D, it boosts my immune system, and I have no flu problems ever. But for the studies about COVID, I was watching them from the very beginning, and they were saying, well, look at this. We know the lower the vitamin D, the higher mortality, but they were never suggesting to take vitamin D. And then when they did some studies, they ignored the most basic thing about vitamin D. It's fat soluble, meaning that that's what it dissolves in. If you don't take vitamins A, D, E, all vitamins except B and C are fat soluble. If you don't take them with fat, you don't absorb them, they go right through you. Mm-hmm. And so every study, I purposely looked for each one in the design of the studies, and not once they gave them vitamin D, but they didn't mention that they didn't tell the patients to take it with food, and particularly with fatty food. So it was completely random, the effects of it. And so that was my argument from the beginning. Well, you guys didn't study it right. This is stupid. But, in my practice, I give high-dose vitamin D as part of my protocol. I wrote a protocol right at the beginning of COVID, and it kind of went viral. And my protocol was high-dose vitamin D for 5 days. I would give 50,000 units of D3 with fat for 5 days, and then back off to twice a week, then once a week. You have to be careful with all fat-soluble vitamins. They are toxic, but not at these doses. Just for a few days, there'll be no toxicity with it. You can't take that for a prolonged time, unlike the water-soluble vitamins B and C, which you urinate out in the excess. But even vitamin C, in high dose, it works very well. Intravenously, it cures an amazing number of things. Orally, it cures a bunch of things. But and we know that because vitamin C, the sicker you are, the more you need. And we can tell that by they put tags on it, and they study people and they watch it. And we know that even giving huge doses intravenously or orally to people who are critically ill, they don't urinate out any because the body absorbs it. The sicker you are, the more vitamin C you need. Now, if you're healthy and you take a lot of vitamin C, at a certain point you'll reach saturation and you'll wind up with diarrhea from it. But that's the only side effect. It's amazingly non-toxic. And so you just back off to the previous dose you were on. And then you find your steady state where you can take it and be okay. Or you can use liposomal vitamin C, which is made inside of a fat particle. It's not a fat molecule. It's not water soluble. That particular formulation is not natural, but it's fat soluble. So you're able to absorb it into fat and store it there. And so that's different than the oral vitamin C, which is water soluble, you urinate out. But there's great endless studies done on it. If you go to orthomolecular medicine and look that up online, they've got a website, I believe it's orthomolecularmedicine.com. They have great studies on vitamin C and various vitamins that you can use to boost your immune system.
But there's so many, it's so powerful and it's so cheap and accessible. I mean, I've heard of stories where there's signs above their beds in the hospital, no vitamin C, no vitamin, literally stopping anybody from prescribing them, an active barrier. And that's very disheartening. It's like there's more than one way to help somebody. Not everybody's built the same way. And it's about give everybody a chance, right? But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But the other thing that is interesting, I had a patient to come in to see me who has had GI issues, and she was told by her physicians never to take a probiotic because it wouldn't work. And I was just shocked and appalled. But I want to know what your take is on probiotics, because to me, that's part of your flora. If you don't have them, doesn't it cause dysbiosis, disequilibrium, sets the whole immune system and everything else off track, doesn't it?
Oh, your immune system is besides circulating white blood cells and things, and the barriers I mentioned in each section of the body, your gut is the second biggest immune organ in your body, and your gut is your first line of defense especially for things you ingest, food and different things, any toxins, any bacteria you might ingest with it, which is loaded with bacteria. It's not sterilized, the stuff we eat. And, first it hits the stomach, and that's such an acid pit that kills most things. However, some survive after it and go into the gut. And in the gut, the lining of the gut looks like a shag rug, as you know, the small intestine. And on top of that is a layer of mucus, and that's loaded with probiotic bacteria, good bacteria, flora that you need for yourself, that is critical for your health. And that is your really great line of defense. I mean, I see people with food allergies, and people are stunned all the time in practice. Why am I developing food allergies? I'm 50. I never had them before, and I explain leaky gut to them. That what happens is that I put them on huge doses of probiotics. I use a VSL number 3. It's a prescription strength one that's really strong, 500 billion per packet. And you need a mixed flora. You don't need not one, not just acidophilus. You need various ones, bifidobacteria, and there's a whole bunch of them. But that's critical for it. And so the first thing one of the things I do for those people is to seal their gut. And I use, the lining of the gut is different than all the other cells in the body. The lining of the small intestine, for example, live on L-glutamine. It's an amino acid. That's their fuel, not glucose like every other cell. And the large intestine uses medium chain triglycerides. And so I use coconut oil for that. And I give L-glutamine and coconut oil. And then I use colostrum, which is from cows. It's when a calf is born, the mother cow it's the first milk they get. And that milk is loaded with antibodies to all different kind of GI illnesses and stuff. And it helps soothe and boost your immune system. So I give colostrum, collagen, L-glutamine, and medium chain triglycerides in the form of coconut oil, organic coconut oil. And I also give them vitamin C to boost their immunity. And after a month or two on this, along with probiotics, they're amazed. all of a sudden their allergies go away, their Hashimoto's gets better, all their autoimmune problems, all their joint aches start waning, because what's happening is in the small intestine, for example, there's things called tight junctions between the cells that need to be held really close together. And that brush border, that red shag rug that I was talking about, that breaks down the surface. That's a huge surface area. And the probiotic bacteria on the surface break down and partially digest a lot of these foods. And then they absorb them and they pass into your blood from there. Well, when your gut's damaged by either toxins or poor diet or antibiotics, all the medicines we're exposed to, that damages the lining, damages the bacteria there. So you have just what you alluded to earlier, dysbiosis. You have bacterial overgrowth of bad bacteria. So they're not part of your immune system, and they're releasing toxins that damage the enterocytes, the cell that line the bacteria, the intestine. And that breaks up the tight junctions and winds up forming spaces between them, and large proteins go in instead of amino acids, which are proteins that are broken down to their parts. And so if a larger protein goes in, and it's similar to the thyroid, for example, your body will make antibodies to it because it shouldn't be there, and mistakenly it will attack your thyroid, and you'll get Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or you'll get a lot of bowel problems, or you'll get a lot of food allergies, but a lot of joint problems, and all these arthralgias that people get. And all of that is from leaky gut. So the first thing I try to do in my patients is heal their gut. That's a really huge line of defense. Boost their immune system and work from there.
We have to take a break, but I'm going to make one statement before we do. And every single practically commercial comes on, it's about anti-inflammatory, something to suppress the immune system. You just described the root cause. And instead of us doing this huge, turn the apple cart over, turn off the immune response, just literally just suppress everything in its mom, you can actually reverse this. I mean, that's just awesome. I mean, that's a wealth of information with all the people coming in with all these new autoimmune issues, IBS with constipation, all this other stuff. You have to start from scratch in order to figure out if this is, and it sounds like it's reversible if you know what you're doing. And I'll let you answer that on the way back, because we're going to take our last break. You're living in the solution. Welcome back to Living Solution. We're speaking with Dr. Ralph LaGuardia. And before the break, Dr. LaGuardia, that was just an awesome synopsis of disease. And it seems to me, if you really think about this, most diseases have a single foundation, a single initiating trigger, inflammation, and turning on the immune response because of inadvertently almost, right?
Correct. You're absolutely right. There's a root cause to almost everything. And we have to, as physicians, we should know better. Not you and I, but the body of physicians, they seem just to march on and just slap a Band-Aid on problems. So I want to know what's cutting you, what's causing the problems, why are your joints killing you? Why are you so tired? All these things. And you're absolutely right. For the vast majority of it, it's inflammation. Once you get that inflammation down, that prevents cancers down the road, that prevents all kinds of organ failures and problems with different organs, because your body, that ravages your immune system and inflammation. And that keeps your body in a state of constant vigilance and battle and constantly fighting. It's exhausting, and it leads to all kinds of other problems from side effects from it. And so if you take a step back and you sit there as a physician and think to yourself, why is this woman exhausted? Why is she feeling so tired? Her joints are killing her. She's getting rashes. She has Hashimoto's that she didn't have before. She has IBS that's killing her. Why are all these things happening to her? You got to just not say, okay, I'm going to treat the IBS. I'm going to give them steroids. I'm going to give them all these other things that we, and I use those things when I have to. But I tell patients, it's going to take a while. This is not a silver bullet. You're not going to do this and the next day feel great. You have to do this for a few months. And you're going to have to eat organic foods. You're going to have to stop eating processed foods. You're going to have to give your body a break from all of this. And you're going to have to take the immune boosting stuff I'm telling you to take. And if you do all those things, I promise you, we may not eliminate all of them, but we're going to eliminate the vast majority of them. You're going to feel a lot better. And in the long run, it's going to help your body and prevent a lot of illnesses down the road, which is my mantra. I'm always trying to stop things later. I don't want to just be a guy who patches problems now. I want to prevent them. I want to be proactive.
I feel exactly the same way. And in my practice, I'm seeing a growing number of patients who get it and who don't want to just put a Band-Aid on it and take a medicine indefinitely. They really are I think, invested now in taking care of their health. And I think your book speaks to that. I know you know the answer, but I'm going to say it for the audience. What's the role of the patient in this? I mean, as physicians, we can't want it more than our patients, We can lead them,
Right.
We can educate them, but ultimately they have to make a conscious decision to change. How do we foster that?
Well, I always say it to my patients. I say, listen, I'm not here to beat you up. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to guide you. And it's your choice if you want to follow what I tell you or not. But if I give the caveat, if you don't follow what I tell you, don't come back to me in 6 months or a year and say, I'm not better. I won't tolerate it. Because I tell them right up the front, I want to hear it later. I gave you a choice. And a lot of them, you still have to remind them later on. You know how that works.
Yes, I do.
So they like to blame someone. You got to look at yourself and go, hey, what am I doing wrong? Here I am, patients are 300 pounds, they're diabetic, they don't exercise at all, they smoke, they drink heavy, they do drugs, they do all kinds of stuff. And they look at you and go, help me. Well, help yourself. At least eliminate some of the things that are killing you, I frequently use the example of patients who come in, many of them have pets. I said, well, you wouldn't let your dog do this. Would you let your dog eat Twinkies and smoke and be exposed to all this stuff and not exercise and lay around? You would not. I said, why are you treating your dog better than yourself? What is with you? Come on, think about it.
Well, it's about being a partner in your care. And, a lot of people now I'm getting a lot of second opinion people coming in who are not happy, or at least there's a little voice saying, maybe I need to get a second opinion. Is that something that you recommend that patients do? I think we have to break the paradigm of if someone says it must be true. I think we need to start asking questions in every aspect of our lives, but specifically healthcare.
Oh, definitely. That's why, that's one of the beautiful things of the internet. It's actually giving the average person the ability to investigate and look at things if they want to, if they're enlightened enough to do it. And in addition, which patients are, a lot of them are, like you said, are starting to wake up to this and realize that. I get new patients all the time that come in with 25 medications. I look at them and go, what are you doing? I said, don't you realize that half your problems are interactions between the medications you're on? How many chemicals can you take into your body and think you're going to feel better? And so I sit down with them and say, look, we're going to take a chance, but I don't know you very well, but I know enough that you've got this, and this. These 7 or 8, I don't want to remove. These are critical. But I'm going to take away a lot of the other ones. If we need to, we'll add them back if we have to. And almost all the time, it works out great. They don't need 15 of those 25. And they feel much better because, as you know, there's interactions between them. You can't take in all those chemicals and expect to feel good.
No, you can't. And there's no thought behind it. It's like I've seen people do 2 and 3 of the same class of medicine. Like, is anybody looking at and it's the same doctor doing it, right? It's not like they're doctor shopping necessarily, but there's no thought involved. But, if your doctor isn't attentive to you, if they're not listening to you, if they're not actually interacting with you, or you don't even see them, maybe it's time that patients start voting with their pocketbook, because this system, I think, got out of control because patients just took it. It's like, okay. And instead of demanding proper, care, communication, patients just let it go. But this system that's come online only understands money. And if you stop feeding it, it will stop. Just withdraw your consent. Sounds to me like that would be the easiest way. Is there any other way that you can think about how we can break this system, this paradigm? Because it's not about health.
Well, I think, not just my book, but there's lots of alternative physicians out there who have written excellent books and guides on how to empower yourself, take command of your health, and do it yourself. But the problem is it's not easy and it's not quick. And as you know, everyone wants a quick fix. They want the silver bullet. They want to be taking the pill and I'm all better tomorrow. There's no such thing. You got to turn things around. And it took you years to get in the horrible shape you're in and in the horrible physical condition you're in. And it's not going to turn around overnight. And I'm frank with patients all the time about that. I've been telling them, I said, look, who's taking care of you? They inject basic things on you. They're just throwing medications, like you said, medication after medication at you, not looking for the root problem, not trying to figure out if the stuff's not working. Maybe it's not the greatest idea to keep adding stuff on top of it. Maybe I should backtrack. Maybe I made a mistake here. You got to be critical of yourself as a physician. Look and say, I'm not always right. Maybe I did something wrong here. Let me look back and think, where was the critical turn for this patient? Where all of a sudden they start getting worse? Patients all the time say, thank me all the time. Well, I said, listen, I'm here to serve you. You're not here to serve me. My job is to take care of you and to serve you. You're not here to make my life easier. They go, oh, my old doctor, I call him up when I'm sick. He says, come in 3 months. I have no openings. What goodness is that?
I know.
I squeeze people in. I said, look, you may have to wait. And I'm busier than hell. But I said, I'll get you in. Don't worry. If you're sick, I'll stay late. I'll call you during lunch, or I'll get you in during lunch or after hours. But I'm not going to make you wait a month and come back in a month when you have the flu or you've got something wrong with you right now that is critical and is time sensitive. But apparently that's not the case for a lot of our colleagues out there, which saddens me overall.
No. And that's why patients need to choose doctors like yourself who really, this is what healthcare and medicine's about. Unfortunately, the time it just goes when you're having fun. But I want to make sure people know how to get your book. And if they live in Connecticut, I know you're busy as all get out, but your practice, they need you need to help more people, basically. So how can people get your books?
And go to Amazon.com, look under Ralph LaGuardia, like the airport, L-A, capital Guardia, or just look under the titles, Infected, the subtitle is Secrets from the Medical Underground. Amazon even sells all three of my books bundled together sometimes. But yeah, you can find them all there. I'm in Mansfield, Connecticut, which is the northeast corner. It's a quiet corner of Connecticut, up by the two casinos up in the country out there. Actually, the University of Connecticut's in my town also. You can contact me there. But I strongly advise patients to take command of their health. Sit your doctor down and say to them, look, I'm not happy with this. This isn't working. What can we do to change this? And if he's not willing to change it, change doctors. You got to be able to talk to the guy or the woman. You got to be able to relate to them. You got to be able to tell them your concerns and have them address them. And like I said, you're not there to serve them. They're there to serve you. Never forget that.
I think that's a great place to stop, because that's a call to action for all patients and for doctors too. So Dr. LaGuardia, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I can't wait to have you back on.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an honor. I hope you have a wonderful day. And I want to thank everybody for living in the solution.
Revolutionary talk for revolutionary times. Liberty Talk FM.